The Hard Count is presented by BetMGM. As y'all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this college football season. We'll be using their lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for all of you each week. Now, when you join BetMGM, you get access to a variety of parlay selection features like same-game parlays, live betting options, and more. If you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, use bonus code HARDCOUNT, and you'll get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how that works. 1, download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code HARDCOUNT. 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code HARDCOUNT when you sign up. Let's make this college football season 1 for the books. Let's make it legendary. Let's get to the show.
Welcome into the Hard Count, the college football show for fans that wish the season would slow down. You go ahead and check what the calendar's saying right now. It's going to be November when they play games this college football Saturday. We already got a double-digit figure next to the week for this college football season. That hurts my heart a little bit. I know it hurts your heart too. Regardless, we're going to make sure we enjoy the heck out of this college football season. As always, the Hard Count presented by BetMGM. It is Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, last one on the face of the planet. A week from today, we're going to be sitting in this exact same spot, unpacking what the first college football playoff rankings have to say regarding this 2025 season. Now, I think it'd be helpful for us together to get a quick jump on those and just predict what the committee would say about those first college football playoff rankings if the rankings came out today. So I want to give this massive disclaimer. These are not my rankings. So don't get in the comment section and say, JD, I can't believe you have this team ranked here. I don't. This is what I think the committee would do. Okay? Other disclaimer. These first rankings of the season, from my estimation, are usually pretty heavy on the resume. And then as we get further into November, the committee leaves themselves some room to do a little bit more eye test stuff and lean on some other analytics. But these first rankings, I think they're going to be very big on who have you beaten and what was that team ranked when you beat them. Purely a prediction. I understand these rankings could change pretty drastically if we were to forecast what they'd look like next week. But if the rankings drop today from the committee, here's what I think they would look like. We'll go 1 through 11 and give you our G5 rep. If you want my rankings, those are on all my social platforms, Instagram, Twitter, at JD PicKell. They're also on the channel. We drop them every Sunday. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe. College football, nothing but college football year-round. Y'all already know the drill. Okay, here's my prediction for what I think the committee would say when it comes to college football playoff rankings as of right now. And number one, I think the committee is going to have Indiana. Reason being, Indiana, when they got their wins against some of these teams, they have 2 top 10 wins. If you're freezing those wins, you got to win at the number 3 team in America, in Oregon. That's a 10-point win. That's the closest game Indiana has played this year. And also, remember, Illinois, when they beat the brakes off them, they were a top 10 team in college football. So based on the resume, which again, I think the committee is going to value very heavily here, you got a 50-point win over a top 10 team. I don't think the committee will be able to help themselves. Indiana will be the number 1 ranked team in college football for the committee, for the college football playoff, if all things hold, if they did their rankings today. Now, I think at number 2, again, going back to resume, I think Texas A&M will be number 2. Texas A&M has a win on the road at a top 10 Notre Dame team, and they throttled a top 20 LSU team at their place. Again, wait, JD, hang on, LSU's not ranked anymore. I understand that. But when they beat them, they were ranked. And I think the committee is going to freeze that win, look at the resume, and say, good for A&M, 2 relatively impressive ranked wins. Also, the eye test thing with A&M probably factors in a little bit. They've looked pretty dominant in a lot of their games. A&M also hasn't lost a game. Again, going off resume, what I think the committee will do, they'll have A&M at number 2. Now, number 3, I think you'll see Ohio State. Now, I want to make sure I say this very, very clearly because the comment section is already going crazy. JD, Ohio State at 3, what are you doing? I'm not doing this. I have Ohio State as my number 1 team in college football. This is not me. Do not shoot the messenger. I think the committee will look at Ohio State and say, well, a couple of good wins. Your best win on paper was against Texas. Texas was the number 1 ranked team in America when you beat them. However, that was week 1, and you beat them by a touchdown. I don't know that the committee will have the maybe courage is the best word to use here. I don't think the committee will have the courage to say that win over Texas was over the number 1 ranked team in America. I think they'll say, Texas, lost a couple of games since you played them. We'll water that win down a little bit. We say that I think that the committee's going to freeze a lot of these wins when they get them, but I think that win will have thawed out a little bit. And then you also beat a top 20 Illinois team, and it's a good win, but I don't know that the committee is going to factor in the eye test nearly enough for Ohio State to have them number 1. I think they should, but the committee, based on resume, I think will have Ohio State at number 3 if they put out their rankings today. Now at number 4, I think you'll see Alabama. Alabama, going into this past weekend, had 4 ranked wins in a row. Their only loss was week 1 to Florida State. Now, I think the committee will say a lot of the right things when it comes to how they assess these teams over the course of this season when it comes to timing. No, we don't factor in too much when a team got a certain win or got a certain loss. Listen, it's still human beings. It's still hard to, at this point in time, remember how Alabama looked against Florida State. I think they'll see Alabama, see their only loss was week 1 of the college football season, and what will live more so in their minds is the win over Missouri, over Vanderbilt, over Georgia, all those ranked wins that make Alabama look like a top 5 team in college football. I think they'll have Alabama at number 4. Now, a team that Alabama beat to kind of catapult themselves back into this conversation nationally will be at number 5, and that's Georgia. Again, if the rankings came out today, I think they'd have Georgia at number 5. Sure, they've flown a little bit close to the sun. Had a couple of games where you got to come back from behind in the second half and make something shake, but still, their only loss, if you're the committee from this perspective, is to the number 4 team in college football. And also you got to win against the top 5 team in college football when they got it, according to the AP, which was Ole Miss, and you beat a top 15 team on the road in Tennessee at their place. I don't see a world where Georgia's outside of the top 5 based on what the committee is saying. At number 6, you'll see Ole Miss. I don't think that we can put Georgia in front of them if we're the committee. Now you're saying, JD, in your rankings, you do have Ole Miss in front of Georgia. What's going on with that? I think Ole Miss and what they've done to this point in the season has just looked really good, and so maybe I'm being a little bit victim of the moment from what happened last weekend for Ole Miss, so I don't apologize for my rankings. But going back to the committee's rankings, I think they'll have Ole Miss at 6. They only have one loss, again, to Georgia. They beat a top 15 team on the road this past weekend against Oklahoma. Looked pretty good doing it. I don't think Ole Miss will be anywhere lower than number 6. Now, here's where it gets a little bit more fascinating, is this 7 through 11 range. At number 7, I think you'll see Georgia Tech, based on what the committee says. Georgia Tech still hasn't lost. Georgia Tech is undefeated, and I think a lot of people will say, yeah, but it's the ACC, but it's Georgia Tech. Like it sort of sits funny with people when you look at that logo in the top 10. I'm just saying they haven't lost a game, and they beat a top 15 team in Clemson when they got that win. Say what you want about Clemson, that win should still count for something. It's still a ranked win, and the fact that you haven't lost a game, I think, will be hard to argue with when it comes to how you assess Georgia Tech. So I think they'll be number 7 if the rankings came out today from the committee. Now, Vanderbilt to me is fascinating because I keep going back to resume. Resume is a big deal for the first rankings from the committee. If we're going off resume, check out Vandy's resume for freezing wins. Vandy has a win at number 11 when they got it, South Carolina, a win over number 10 LSU when they got it, a win over number 15 Missouri, and their only losses to Alabama. Talking about resume, Vandy's got a nice little resume there. So I wouldn't be shocked if Vandy ended up being a little bit higher in these rankings. I think the committee will be a little bit tentative to put that Vanderbilt logo, whether it's right or wrong, higher than number 8. But I think number 8 for Vanderbilt, being in the top 10 of the first college football playoff rankings of the 2025 season, the resume is hard to argue with, especially if you're freezing those wins. So Vandy at number 8. I think the committee will put BYU at number 9. BYU only has one ranked win if you're freezing them against number 23 Utah, but they haven't lost. They've beaten everybody else. And so I wouldn't be shocked if BYU was higher up. I do think, quite frankly, the Big 12 cannibalistic nature of that conference could end up being something that keeps BYU from being higher than 9 in these first rankings. But I keep going back to this. Resume, lack of losses, those first rankings, I think the committee tries to be a little bit conservative with how they assess these teams. So I think BYU will be top 10, more specifically number 9, if the committee put out those rankings today. At number 10, you'll have Miami. I hear you. Louisville lost. It was bad, but if we're freezing those ranked wins, Notre Dame was a ranked win for Miami. Florida State was a ranked win for Miami, and USF was a ranked win for Miami. I think they also, quite frankly, will throw Miami a bit of an eye test bone here. I think people talking about Miami being a top 2 team in college football for the duration of the last couple of weeks will actually serve them well in the minds of the committee. So Miami, yeah, you got one loss. You control your own college football playoff destiny in my money, and I think they'll be a number 10 team if those rankings came out today. Obviously, this is all subject to change based on what could happen in Week 10 of the college football season, but I think the committee will have Miami at number 10 if they gave those rankings out today. At number 11, listen, I don't think the committee can help themselves, dude. I really don't. I think you look at resume, we talk about good wins. I think it's going to be tough to not talk about good losses for Notre Dame. I think they'll be number 11. Their 2 losses, if these rankings end up being accurate based on today, will be to the number 2 team in college football in A&M by a play, mind you, and the number 10 team in college football in Miami by 3 points the first week of the college football season. They have a ranked win by 10 points over USC when they got it. I think they're going to look at Notre Dame and factor in the eye test a little bit more here than they are with other teams. I think Notre Dame's been super impressive relative to the wins they've gotten. I think Notre Dame's going to be number 11. Now, are there other teams that could sneak up here that have fewer losses? Sure. But I think Notre Dame's going to be positioned by nature of the kinds of losses they got and the rankings from those teams that they lost to. I think they'll be number 11 when these rankings come out. So remember now, with the new model of the college football playoff, it's straight seeding. So if you win your conference, you don't get a bye anymore. That's not going to be a thing here. It used to be the 5 highest ranked conference champions. That's not a thing. If you win your conference, you're guaranteed a college football playoff spot, but you're not guaranteed a bye if you're one of those 5, or rather 4 highest ranked conference champions. So it'll be those 11, but the G5 still has a seat at the table in this college football playoff discussion. That's why we draw nothing but ball rankings the way that we do. We account for the G5 for that 12th spot. And the G5 rep, I think, based on the College Football Playoff Committee's assessment, I don't know how it's not Memphis here, y'all. I really don't. Say what you want about the UAB loss, but they beat Arkansas, and they beat the only other team that could contend for this spot in USF. So USF, yeah, got a ranked win to their name over Florida when they got it, but like legitimately, if you have a head-to-head scenario there, I don't know how you're leaving USF out of that slot based on what the rest of the college football playoff world currently looks like. So to recap here, Indiana will be 1, A&M will be 2, Ohio State will be 3, Bama will be 4, followed by Georgia at 5, Ole Miss at 6, Georgia Tech at 7. You'll see Vandy at 8. Yes, Vanderbilt at 8, BYU at 9, Miami at 10. You'll see Notre Dame at 11, and Memphis in that G5 spot to make up the current playoff picture of those 12 teams. That is how I see it as of today. We're not forecasting what's going to happen in Week 10 based on these rankings, but if the College Football Playoff Committee gave us their rankings today, I think that's how it would look. Let me know in the comment section, though, what you think it will look like or what it should look like right now based on the happenings 9 weeks into this college football season. It hurts my heart, man. I told y'all before the show started, or before we got rolling into that first segment of the show, 10 weeks already of the college football season. It's a wild place to be. You got frost on the windshield. You got the air crisping up a little bit. It's a sad thing. It's a very sad thing, but we're going to make sure we soldier forward. This upcoming Saturday will be November 1st. Okay? So they remember November, just to put it simply. So if that's the case, who are going to be the most impactful people in college football for the month of November? Got a couple of them I want us to unpack together here. What I'm factoring in here when we talk about impact for college football in the month of November, I'm really honing in here on college football playoff aspirations. So if you remember our college football playoff bubble talk we had last Wednesday or Thursday, I want to say it was, we're almost zeroing in on that idea even further and talking about the people that will impact these college football playoff aspirations. And Tennessee was one of those teams that we had on the college football playoff bubble last week. Tennessee beat Kentucky, still in the college football playoff bubble. You know who's going to have the greatest amount of impact for Tennessee when it comes to their playoff aspirations? I don't know how it's anybody besides defensive coordinator Tim Banks. You say, well, JD Joey Aguilar, he's got to play well, right? Yeah, he totally does. Absolutely. Receiving corps got to step up. Chris Brazzell, yeah, no doubt. They have been stepping up. Joey Aguilar has been snapping. If I'm Tennessee, my thought process is if we hold teams to less than 30, just less than 30, we're going to be a college football playoff team. As of right now, Tennessee is number 97 in college football when it comes to their stop rate. Number 97 of 136 teams. If I told you that information back in media day time, like August territory, that Tennessee's going to be 97 when it comes to their stop rate in college football. What would you guess Tennessee's record is? 3 losses? 4 losses going into November? They got 2 losses right now, brother. A 10-2 Tennessee is not getting left out of the college football playoff. So going back to my point here, Oklahoma, New Mexico State, at Florida, Vanderbilt. You hold them all to less than 30. That offense is going to score. That offense is going to score, I promise you. So Tim Banks, if we can dial up some timely defensive stops, again, I'm not asking you to be just the 85 Bears out there. If we can just be timely on the defensive side of the football and get the ball back to Joey Aguilar and let Josh Heupel drop some pictures so we can go score some more points, we're going to be a playoff team, I promise you. It's all about, can you hold the opposition in timely fashion to allow your offense to get some leverage? And that's the big word I want to use here. It's all about leverage when it comes to Tim Banks and what that defense is doing. If you allow Joey Aguilar in this offense to get like a 14-point lead, nobody's catching them. They're not. You can say all the good things you want about Diego Pavia and tell me all the numbers about how Tennessee hasn't won in the swamp in however many years. Listen, I don't care. I do not care. Why? Because I trust that offense so much, and I look at the way that Josh Heupel's been able to almost shapeshift his scheme when it comes to how they approach different points in different games. Last year was a lot of game control. 2022, it was, we're going to go score 40-plus, try and catch us. It's that same thought process here when it comes to this November stretch for Tennessee. I think if you just give them leverage and give Josh Heupel the controls of the game, he's going to do the right things with it, and Tennessee's going to be a team that's in the college football playoff. So going back to the most important person here, Tim Banks, DC for Tennessee. I'd like stops. That'd be ideal when it comes to 3 and out, punting situation, turnover on downs, whatever. Turnovers might even be better in this situation. Like if you can just be risk it for the biscuit, we called Tennessee defensively the wrong clock of college football. Wrong a lot, but right twice a day. You'd be right twice a day. You take the football away once or twice a game going forward here, I feel really good about Tennessee finding a way to get into the college football playoff. Again, because Joey Aguilar is getting the football, Tennessee's going to score points. I don't think you're catching Tennessee if you get down 10-14. Just how I feel about it. So the most important person, or one of the most important, most impactful people in the college football playoff discussion for Knoxville folks, it's Tim Banks. It's not breaking news, but just to put a finer point on it, Tim Banks, if you can get some stops, some turnovers, you're going to be a college football playoff team. All right? Pretty straightforward. Next up, when it comes to most impactful people in college football for the month of November, Michigan's also sitting there with 2 losses. They were a bubble team for us last week. The main thing's the main thing for them, man. If you can find a way to be two-dimensional as an offense, you're going to give yourself every opportunity to play Ohio State with still only 2 losses. And if they're multidimensional, who's saying Michigan doesn't find a way to beat Ohio State that last week of the season? And you're saying, JD, Ohio State's a wagon, the defense is so good. I do not disagree. But the most impactful person for the month of November in the Big Ten period might be Bryce Underwood. Because Bryce Underwood, to this point in the year, I still feel a little bit like I'm not getting the full experience with him at quarterback. And when you're playing Michigan State and that's your quote-unquote little brother and you feel like you're supposed to just own them in a rivalry fashion, I'm okay with running for 276. At the exact same time, though, I'm looking at Bryce Underwood and his numbers, 8 for 17, less than 100 yards passing. The mission here for Michigan is to ramp him up as much as possible so when you play Ohio State, you're ready to cut it loose and have different pitches when you play them that final week of the season. Because it will be, for my money, a college football playoff sort of environment for Michigan. Now, Ohio State's probably a college football playoff lock at this point in time, barring something wildly unforeseen. But for Michigan, you're probably playing for your college football playoff live in that game. All right? I also feel a little bit like, speaking to the Bryce Underwood experience, let's cut him loose in the run game, man. And my thought behind that is like, what are you saving him for? This dude's 230, 240, can throw down backflips. Let him carry the football. There has not been a game yet this year where Bryce Underwood has had double-digit carries. The closest thing to that was his 9-carry game against Central Michigan. And guess what? He went for over 100 yards rushing. Let him carry the mail and ramp that up a little bit here as we move down the stretch in November. Purdue, at Northwestern, at Maryland. That is the 3-game runway we have here for Michigan to get number 19 as ready as possible for the game against Ohio State, for all the marbles to go have a chance to make the college football playoff. Like, that is the mission here. 110%. If you have another pitch, you're going to have a chance. Because, quite frankly, you beat Ohio State last year based on willpower, Michigan magic, a couple of first-rounders on the D-line. I think that could exist in some respects here still for the Wolverines, but I don't want to bank on that. Like Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, they're watching this game either from the sideline or at their place in their respective cities they live in now. They're not going to be available to take over the game on the line of scrimmage. And I think that Michigan's still really good on defense, but that can't be my only path to victory in this spot. You got to be able to score points, or at least have a plan to score points if you're Michigan. I don't think you win based off purely game control in this game against Ohio State. So going back to this whole point, Bryce Underwood being able to be at the peak of his powers against Ohio State, that is how you become a college football playoff team. That is why Bryce Underwood is one of the most impactful people in the month of November when it comes to the landscape of the college football playoff discussion. Cato, these are Wolverines, brother. This is the team that you had way back in August. You picked them. You called your shot. You said the Wolverines to the 12-team playoff. Go ahead and write that in Sharpie. They're staring down the barrel of a chance to go do that, man. What does Bryce Underwood need to do? What are your overall thoughts on Bryce Underwood when it comes to his impact down the stretch here in the month of November for the Wolverines?
Yeah, I feel like I had to speak on this because I have my blue collar on today.
Ooh, that's nice. It's like kind of a corduroy vibe by you, bro. I like it.
Appreciate it. I think the Bryce Underwood rushing is interesting because it's a great question you ask. It's a great point you bring up as far as unleashing him in the run game. Would it not just be so Michigan to wait until the Ohio State game to unleash Bryce Underwood on the ground? Like, I'm curious now because I listened to Sharon Moore's press conference this morning, and they were asking him about the pass attempts for Bryce Underwood and why they were so low. And he's like, I mean, we ripped off 20-yard runs. Like, I don't feel the need to throw the ball. So I feel like Michigan's in an interesting position where if they do feel that way to where they don't need to necessarily have Bryce progress in game as a passer to have a level of comfort, and they're okay with doing what they need to do to win, and Bryce kind of forming to what they need. I just think it's really interesting. Like, it's going to be the next couple of weeks. I feel like it's going to be hard to analyze the Wolverines because there could be games like we saw this weekend where they're not throwing the ball a bunch, they're running it. And then maybe there's games where they ask more of him, but I think they're going to do exactly what they need to win these games. So when they do get to Ohio State, they have some of their cards a little bit closer to them. They can maybe show some exotic runs with Bryce Underwood, some passing concepts they haven't shown. I think they're going to sell out for this last game of the year, and they don't care how it looks in the box score these weeks leading up to it. So I'm watching, obviously. I have a close eye on Michigan because I picked them going to the playoff. But throughout the week, the more I get removed from the Michigan State game, I think they might be playing a little bit of possum heading into this Ohio State game because I think I'd have more confidence, and I think we'd all have more confidence, those who have a rooting interest in Michigan, if Bryce Underwood's throwing for 300 yards, lighting it up, doing his thing. I think they're trying to kind of downplay it a little bit now, do what they have to do to win, and then we might see a full bag maybe coming up against Ohio State when that game where it matters most.
A little sleight of hand, a little deception.
I think a little bit.
A little, like you said, a little playing possum from the folks out there.
I think a little bit, man. I think the offseason, I think they feel like all the off seasons for development. Sharon also talked about how far Bryce has come from the Oklahoma game, first game on the road to now. So I think they have trust in him, they have confidence in him, and I think that they're going to try to pound the rock. That's what they do. They're going to try to impose their will on their next couple of opponents and Ohio State. I wouldn't be surprised though if they had a secret bag of tricks that they had for the Ohio State game specifically. So, man, anytime we talk about the lack of passing game they had last year and them still being able to win, man, it fires you up for this year's version of the game, man, because Michigan seems a lot more polished on offense, and Ohio State still doing Ohio State things.
I was going to say, it's one of those things, too, where you looked at that spread going into the game, and it was Ohio State minus 20.5 or something egregious. Yeah. I don't think the spread will be nearly that number this year, but if that's the outlook going into the game, if you're a Michigan fan, you're like, make it minus 27.5 Ohio State. We really don't care. Just lock the gate and get us into that game and let us go do what we do, which is historically now, given the last couple of seasons, beat Ohio State. Here's my thing, Cato. I've never run a marathon. I have friends that have, and they have a good saying that goes to nothing new on race day. Like, if I'm Michigan, I don't want to get to the Ohio State game and be trying out a ton of new things with our college football playoff hopes on the line. So I don't need them to totally open it up and unveil everything, but I'm very much so in lockstep with what you're saying. When we play some of these games here in November, I want to just see a couple of Easter eggs of like, oh, interesting, they pulled that one out of the bag in a 42-point blowout over Purdue, or when they were up big over Northwestern interesting. They pulled out a play or two there where Bryce Underwood pushed it downfield, and maybe they didn't hit on it, but at least they tried it and tried it out in a game-like setting. That's my big thing. I just want to see something out there for the folks in Ann Arbor, so where it's not totally new when we play Ohio State as a 2-loss team trying to make the college football playoff.
No, that's a great call. I found myself frustrated with some of the offense that they were running against Michigan State, and I'm like, wait, I think this is exactly what they want me to think, or what they'd want an Ohio State to think. Like they want them to be, oh, this is typical Michigan, just running the ball, doing what they have to do to win, playing solid defense. I'm like, wait a second, I think they're trying to lull me and the Ohio State Buckeyes, that team across the way, to sleep. So we'll see, man. I think it's going to be an interesting case study to watch both of these teams leading up to when they meet and what both coordinators decide to do. I think there's a lot of chess, I think, being played between these two teams, given their opponents leading up to what they got going on.
The art of
the
war.
Game comes around. The art of war, for sure.
A little deception there from Sun Tzu and the Wolverines. So that'll be a fun one to keep a pulse on, though. Cato, I hope that we get to victory lap with you when it comes to Michigan potentially being a playoff team. I didn't pick Michigan to make the playoff, so I will very much so be riding your coattails there. But regardless, just because you picked them, I hope that we get to have that discussion here. But obviously we'll pick that game when it gets a little bit closer. Moving right along here, though, in terms of most impactful people in college football for the month of November, I don't know how you don't have Marcus Freeman on this list. Notre Dame sitting there with 2 losses, started out the year 0-2, been well documented, won to A&M, which is looked like a loss that has continued to age well, lost to Miami, which looks at the time to be aging pretty well. Notre Dame, as a 2-loss team, will make the college football playoff. All you have in front of you here this month, at Boston College, Navy, at Pitt, Syracuse, at Stanford. If you run the table in that stretch, you will be a college football playoff team. They'll be favored in every game, and they're, quite frankly, deserving of being favored in every game they have left. They are better than those teams. So what's it going to take for Notre Dame to be a playoff team? Focus, being locked in. Whenever it's about those things, whenever it's about avoiding distractions or blocking out the noise or whatever other way you want to phrase it, who is it about? The head coach. The head coach sets the temperature, sets the coordinates, sets the focus level for your locker room. A focused Notre Dame is making the playoff. And I want to just compare Marcus Freeman to a couple of people here, which is kind of lofty territory. But think about those Alabama teams when Nick Saban was the head coach. They never really lost games they weren't supposed to lose. Yeah, they'd have a battle against LSU in Death Valley and drop a game like that, or they'd play someone in the SEC championship game or play someone in the playoff that was really good, and maybe it wouldn't be the best showing of Alabama. But for the most part, you got the best version of Alabama every single week. A big part of that, I think the main key in that was Nick Saban. Georgia right now, Kirby Smart and company. Yes, they've had a Bama issue of sorts. But whenever it's time to roll, and Georgia's out there in the month of November and it's winning time, Georgia does not stub their toe in games they're not supposed to stub their toe in. And so that's the same thing for Notre Dame here. It's all about Marcus Freeman being able to lock these guys in and being able to have them play their best football. In addition to that, looking back to what last year was for Notre Dame, they got through the month of September, and from October forward, Notre Dame did not play a game in the regular season, that is, that they didn't win by more than 2 scores. Every single game, they were rolling, they were confident, they had found their rhythm, they had found their identity. A big part of that to me is Marcus Freeman. That's where they get scary. The scary thing for the rest of college football isn't if Notre Dame finds their way into the college football playoff and it's a good story, they were an 11 seed and they started 0-2. It'd be fun for sure, there's no way around that. But the scary thing for college football is if Notre Dame shows up in that college football playoff with the same degree of confidence they had going into the playoff last season. Cato made this point a couple of weeks ago. I think it's a great one. You should be scared if you're a team that has to play Notre Dame and they see themselves in a different light when they look in the mirror relative to how you see them. If Notre Dame has a confidence, an edge, a swagger about themselves because they're blowing the doors off Syracuse and Stanford and Pitt and Boston College in the month of November and they walk in with a little bit of swagger, that Notre Dame team you saw against Miami and lose to A&M, that's a different team that you see in the college football playoff. Marcus Freeman, as much as he's a gifted communicator and motivator when it comes to getting his team to lock in week and week out, I think he's different than some of the other coaches in the space in the sense that he's able to instill a certain level of confidence in his football teams. Like C.J. Carr, it's his first-year starting quarterback. He doesn't look like he's out there playing the first-year starting quarterback. He has some first-year starting quarterback moments, He looks enormously poised, looks like he's got a little bit of an edge to him in a positive way. Like, he's not half-stepping out there. Even in the plays that he has that he wishes he had back, he's out there playing with a certain degree of swagger. Why? From the top down, Marcus Freeman is a confident coach. Confidence from your persona of your leadership equals confidence in the persona of your football team. So it's about focus. Who's responsible for focus? For Notre Dame, it's Marcus Freeman. And if they're focused, they're going to be a college football playoff team. That is the Freeman effect. There's no way around that. Cato, I want to get your thoughts here on Marcus Freeman really quick, too, because we've talked a little bit about them being a two-loss team and how do they get perceived when it comes to the rest of the landscape and different things happening in the Big 12 and the ACC. Like, they went out there a playoff team, no? Am I reading that incorrectly?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think there's still a lot of dominoes to fall in the month of November. This whole segment is about they remember November. You're going to be remembered. You're going to be in or out of the playoffs because of the ball you play in November. I think there are just so many teams that are either already at 2 losses or have 1 loss that could very well get a second this month, that all of a sudden we understand that the 2 losses Notre Dame does have are very respectable. But if there's some, say Ole Miss gets another loss, another SEC loss, and they're a 2-loss team, you have 2-loss Ole Miss and a 2-loss Notre Dame. Well, yeah, you might have as good of losses as Notre Dame, 2 ranked teams, 2 top 15 teams, whatever it may be. But then all of a sudden we have to account for the rest of the schedule. And if you're going through an SEC gauntlet compared to what Notre Dame's going through, that's when I start to worry about them getting left out of the playoff when you compare their resumes. So when you look at the Big 12, when you look at the ACC, okay, like if there's a 2-loss team that you're comparing to Notre Dame, then maybe you can give Notre Dame the nod. But I think once we get to the SEC and some of these other teams that have uniquely hard schedules, that they make it out of there with 2 losses. I just think it's so much different than a Notre Dame team at the very beginning of the season getting their 2 losses and maybe turning into another monster versus an SEC team that has gone through an entire gauntlet and then taken 1 other loss. I mean, it's the Alabama thing, right? Like week 1, same with Cincinnati. Week 1, you might have a week 1 loss that every win you get after that, you could run the table after that and you're a completely different team. Notre Dame has done that, but unfortunately compared to some of these other teams, they don't have those benchmarks to really prove themselves, I think, on a big stage against a big-time opponent outside of what they did against USC, which was a past test for them.
Here's my thing. If I told you, take any roster in college football that's in the playoff discussion right now and give them 2 losses, is there another head coach you would want coaching your football team in playoff mode from September on? Like, I think going back to last year, the NIU loss, that team was in playoff mode after that game, and they handled it as well as anybody else could have in college football, having played for the national championship. Like, I think that whole Freeman effect of urgency and being in playoff mode during the regular season, he seems to thrive in that territory. You hate being in playoff mode after, second week of the season, but I think if there was a coach you had to pick to be in that spot, Freeman's got the chops and he's proven it.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, I was thinking this when you were talking about your playoff rankings too. Like, a lot of we try to predict our playoffs and our brackets and all that kind of stuff, but I think when it comes down to it, the seeding is just so important. And when I squint and I close my eyes and I picture Notre Dame making the cut, and then you kind of look at each quadrant, every fourth of the bracket. I mean, if Marcus Freeman's the best coach on his side of the bracket, who's to say they're not going to the semis? It's going to be hard for me to bet against him. And in your playoff scenario, you had them ranked 11th. Mm-hmm. So that means they would have a first-round matchup against 5 or 6, right?
Yes.
It'd be 11 versus 6, which is Ole Miss. So it's like at Ole Miss, Marcus Freeman. Awesome. First of all, that'd be an awesome matchup. There's a bunch of awesome matchups. You'd have I think your bracket would even have a Miami versus Georgia Tech scenario too, which would just be fun. Yeah. But it's gonna come down to matchups when we get to this playoff. And if you're in Ohio State of last year, you could be the most talented team and have the hardest path and still make it. And same for a Marcus Freeman. Hey, Marcus Freeman, it's your first playoff. You have to play Kirby Smart, who's the consensus best coach in college football, and you win that game and go all the way to the Natty. So I'm curious how much that'll impact the committee and all of these rankings, really, because you talk about Ohio State being your number 1 team in the country. Mm-hmm. That's most people's number 1 team in the country. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with the pedigree of what they did last year and that clearly transitioning into this year. But does the committee look at that? Do they consider that? There's a lot for them to figure out, but I think depending on the amount of 2-loss teams around the country, depending on their conference and their schedule, it'll get really interesting with Notre Dame comparing those teams and trying to figure out and sort out where they go. But I'd have a hard time not putting him there, just knowing what they're capable of on the reputation of their head coach and what they did last year.
I can't disagree, man. When it comes to goodwill or good faith baked in for the committee, you can say whatever you want about, well, last year was last year, but if you look at a number of teams on the bubble, and Notre Dame's sitting there in that bubble territory with 2 losses, and it's them versus a different head coach maybe you don't trust as much if you're the committee, I'd have a hard time not going Notre Dame in that setting for what you just said with Marcus Freeman and all that he brings to the table there. So we'll see, man. We'll see. But without a doubt, Marcus Freeman, one of the most impactful people in the month of November moving forward here in college football. Dylan Raiola, I think, is also one of the most impactful people in the month of November in college football. And when I look at all the reasons he came to Nebraska, what was like his big thing when he committed there outside of the poem and all that stuff? It was like, I want to be the reason why this place has some shine on the logo again. I want to be the reason why we get back to being a team that's relevant in the national discussion in college football. Well, Dylan Raiola, you're sitting there with 2 losses, brother, and everything at your fingertips. If you can beat USC, that schedule is not ridiculous the rest of the way. At UCLA, feels very winnable. You'd like to think Nebraska, should they beat USC, is favored in that game. At Penn State. Penn State's still very talented. It's, at State College, so we'll see what that line looks like. But I think Nebraska is not a situation you thought you had going into the year where you're playing Penn State. That was one you probably penciled in as a loss if you're a Nebraska fan. Now you're saying, hey, we could beat Penn State. And then Iowa at home. I feel like you should win that game if you're Nebraska, based on it being at home, based on what you have at quarterback and what Iowa hasn't had offensively. All of these games are winnable. So for Dylan Raiola, the reason why it's so impactful for you in the context of this playoff discussion right now in the month of November, you signed up to be the difference. And in every single one of those games, I'm looking at Nebraska offensively and saying, Dylan Raiola, you got to be the difference. USC is going to score 42. Is basically what they've done on average throughout the course of this year. Raiola, we got to match him, brother. We got to match him. You said no to Lincoln Riley as a recruit to go to Nebraska. So you said no to that guy. You got to go beat him now on the other sideline. UCLA, same deal. Like, you're probably going to have to score points to win that football game. At Penn State, at Iowa, not at Iowa, when you play Iowa. If you want to be the difference, this is that runway where you can maximize and accentuate you being that difference for having come to Nebraska. Are there other things that have to factor in for you to win that football game or win those stretch of football games? Absolutely. But if Dylan Raiola plays to his potential and is able to unhitch the trailer a little bit in terms of what Nebraska's been offensively here, it's all teed up for him to be successful based on what they've done over the course of this offseason and what they did at the end of last year, switching coordinators. It is all teed up situationally to make Dylan Raiola the difference. This is that stretch where you have to go be the difference, Dylan Raiola. So I can't wait to see what he does, but without question, Dylan Raiola, to me, one of the most impactful individuals in the month of November relative to this college football playoff discussion. One more player to talk about here, one more person. I think Carson Beck is one of the most impactful people in college football in the month of November. Go ahead and check out the ACC title race, man. It's tight. It's a very tight title race. And right now, there are 2 teams in that conference that are undefeated in conference play. That's Georgia Tech and that's Virginia. So if you're Miami, you're saying, we think we're the best team in the ACC. But as of right now, we don't have that record that aligns with that train of thought. The reason why that's important, Miami last year finished 10-2. 10-2, not playing for the ACC championship, means you got left out of the college football playoff. And quarterback wasn't the issue last year. Quarterback was your strength. You're having Cam Ward will you to victory in different spots. The defense was the problem last year. Guess what, Miami? Defense not the problem this year, brother. It's not. Ruben Bain's a psychopath. You put together that portal secondary. It's been awesome. The way that you have just attacked it on the defensive side schematically with Corey Heatherman, you are a good enough outfit defensively now to go win the ACC. You're hoping that Georgia Tech drops a game. You're hoping that Virginia drops a game here the rest of the way. But for Carson Beck, if you're able to win the rest of your games, I don't think 11-1 Miami's left out of the college football playoff, even if you're not playing for the ACC championship. 11-1, you're in. Now, the reason why Carson Beck's so important in this context, we've seen what Miami can be when he's not on the money. We've seen what can happen for Miami when he has an off day. You wonder what I'm talking about. 4 interceptions against Louisville, you lost the football game. So my point in all this is Miami has a roster around Carson Beck to go be a playoff team. Defensively, I think offensively with the skill players, they are good enough. The question is, at the quarterback position, do you get enough consistency, enough production week in and week out to get you to where your roster is good enough to go. Okay, and I think when you look at just overall what's in front of Miami here, when you look down the stretch here for the Hurricanes, you lost 2 of the last 3 last year. This time last year, we're talking about Miami, and they're undefeated. They just got to control their own, controllables and just not stub their toe. And you lose to Georgia Tech, lose to Syracuse. Now, I think Georgia Tech's actually a good football team. We're seeing that in the context of this season carry over from last year to this year. But looking at what they have in front of them, I don't think that there's a bunch of games for Miami that make you feel as nervous necessarily. Like Pitt maybe is a game that you look at with the side eye. I guess SMU could be trickier this week with it being on the road. We'll break that down here in a second. But overall, Miami, you're in the same position you were at the end of last year as you are this year. Same position. Control your own destiny. Win the game you're supposed to win. You're a college football playoff team. And so that whole thought goes back to, for me around Miami, can you have a professional mindset? We'll unpack that a little bit more in depth here in this preview when we talk about the game against SMU. But I think that point stands. For Carson Beck specifically, can you reset from the loss against Louisville? Can you reset from the win against Stanford? Can you reset if you go beat SMU? Can you reset every single week and play your best football to get this team to where they are supposed to go? Because it's not a matter of pieces for Miami. It's not. The roster's good enough. I think the staff's good enough. It's all on Carson Beck. Can you take care of business on your end to make this whole system go? Because the other thing with Miami here, it's not a game manager kind of system offensively. It goes through the quarterback. Yeah, you have some power run game stuff. Yeah, you try to take the air out of the football at different points in the game if you're Miami and impose your will, and the defense is good, but this whole team will go as Carson Beck goes. Again, if you don't believe me, look at the Louisville game. Carson Beck, 4 picks, lose the football game. That is on the table for them here the rest of the way. But if Carson Beck plays his best ball, if Miami just wins out, I don't know if they play for the ACC championship. Again, you need some help at this point in time based on those other 2 teams that are undefeated in your conference, but you will be a college football playoff team. And just get us in the dance here if I'm Miami. Get us in the dance, allow us to reset as a team, get our quarterback a chance to go at it, and we'll see what happens from there. Because 10-2 was not good enough last year. You have a chance to go be a playoff team this year. It will all ride with Carson Beck, is what my money is saying at this point in time for the good folks in the 305. Now, speaking of the 305, Miami's not playing a game in the 305 this weekend. They're going to take their talents out to Dallas, Texas, Highland Park, I guess, more specifically. Miami at SMU, 12 Eastern, ESPN, so you'll finish up College Game Day. You'll get McAfee's final pick. You'll tune into this one. Currently, Miami, a 12.5-point favorite over SMU. This game opened over at BetMGM at 10.5, so gone up 2 points towards the Hurricanes. For Miami, it's you versus you, brother. It is you versus you, and that's not me speaking anything less of what SMU is from a personnel perspective, but we're all adults here. We all understand that line is what it is for a reason. If Miami plays their best ball, they will win this football game. Are you able to, what we just said about Carson Beck, the segment before, are you able to, as a football team, have a pro mindset, take the loss from Louisville, flush it out, take the win over Stanford, flush it out, and bring your best to the table with a 11 a.m. local kick? 12 Eastern, 11 a.m. local for the good folks out there in Texas. Get up, play your best ball, handle business on the road. That is what is at the crux of the discussion here if you are Miami. Now for SMU, the line is what it is. But hey, man, you only got 1 loss in ACC play. You lost to Wake Forest last week by a point. Rip your heart out. You got 1 loss in the ACC. You're very much still in it. You go ahead and handle business the rest of the way. You win out. Maybe you get some help. Maybe you find yourself in a situation where you're playing for the conference title. But that only happens if you have a tiebreaker over Miami. Because Miami, I mean, they got 1 loss too when it comes to the ACC. So we'll see what happens there the rest of the way. But just something to think about here for SMU. I think a lot of people have sort of punted on the idea of them having the magic they had from a year ago. They're still in the mix here. They are still in the mix. And remember now, Rhett Lashley at one point in time was at Miami as an OC. So maybe there's a little bit extra personal element here for old Coach Lashley. We'll see. For SMU, the path to victory for you here is being able to recreate what Louisville did to Miami. Find your matchup, much like Louisville did. Get the ball to their wide receiver, Chris Bell, who got after Miami. The matchup I'm looking at here for SMU as being a potential advantage is Romello Brinson, leading receiver for SMU. was previously at Miami. So he knows a lot of guys on that roster. Have to imagine he's familiar with a bunch of those guys, having been his former teammate. If you can force feed him the football and just go to him consistently and have him be your answer on 3rd and long, red zone, whatever, that's the way that you end up winning this football game. Because, again, the line is what it is for a reason, because Miami overall has better players. But if you can just find your one matchup and go to it consistently and abuse that, that's how you win the football game. Other thing Louisville did at a very effective level against the Hurricanes, speed up Carson Beck. Speed up Carson Beck, more opportunity for mistakes. Mistakes usually equate to turnovers in college football. If you can get a couple extra possessions against this Miami team and maybe you have them a little bit out of sorts again, that's how you give yourself a chance to win this game at home. And then the last part of this, Kevin Jennings has got to be awesome for you. It just has to be. Like, I think overall, the structure, if you went your players versus their players in the confines of your plays versus their plays, Miami is going to win this game. That's what the line says. That's what I'm telling you. That is, I think, pretty straight up here. But if you're SMU and you're able to win the out-of-structure stuff, the play breaks down, Ruben Bain gets after Kevin Jennings spins out of it, eyes downfield. At that point in time, personnel isn't minimized, but I think it is maybe mitigated a little bit there when it comes to what Kevin Jennings can do for you, scrambling, picking up the hidden yardage, all those things, yards that maybe aren't drawn up for or accounted for when it comes to your scheme. That is something Kevin Jennings can do for you, will have to do for you in this game where you say, yeah, we had the right play called, had the right pressure called, but number 7 just had the cape on that day, man, for SMU. So if that's the way it goes, that's a way that could favor SMU in this football game. SMU, we have got to have the north and south game plan. There's no way. It's got to be north and south. It cannot be the whole put the ball on the perimeter, try and get a little bit cute with it. It's got to be we're going downhill, we're staying ahead of the sticks, inside zone, we'll take power, we'll take trap, whatever it is. It's got to be north and south. You're not going to win on the perimeter against this Miami defense. They're too physical, too aggressive. Now, what you can do here is maybe dial up a little play action, a little screen and go, but I like SMU a little bit more with north and south game plan. Against Wake Forest, SMU tried to get a little bit cute early on. They had their first 14 plays, and 9 of them went for 0 yards or less. Can't have that same kind of start if you want to beat Miami. Now, if you want to get to this game, best way to do that is with Game Time. And those of y'all that have followed this show for a while, man, Game Time has been good to us. Game Time has been good to you if you've been using the code to get your first purchase and save yourself some money. If you're saying, what's Game Time? Game Time is the fast, easy, safe, effective, affordable way to buy tickets. And if you're saying, maybe, JD, I want to get to this game, but I'm not sure yet. I want to just kind of hold off a little bit and see how my week goes. And if I'm feeling like going and getting to a game on Saturday morning, if you want to do that, it's more than fine with you. It's your prerogative. But you can buy tickets the morning of this game using Game Time. Also, you can see the view from your seat before you buy the ticket. You're not sitting behind the Jumbotron or not sitting behind some weird structure in the stadium. You'll know what you're going to see from your seat using the Game Time app. You can view your seat before you buy, and it's the best way to avoid any surprises on Saturday whenever you're trying to get to a football game. So, if you hear nothing else, hear this. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code HARDCOUNT for $20 off your first purchase. Again, HARDCOUNT, HARDCOUNT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed swipe, tap, ticket. So make sure you lock in there with Game Time. I think Miami's going to control the line of scrimmage. I really do. I think that when you look at the way that SMU wasn't able to really get a push against Wake Forest, I don't like that transitive property going for the Miami defensive line. Like, I don't think that you're going to get a better push against Miami than you did Wake Forest, just quite frankly. I think when you look at Miami offensively, though, that's where this kind of gets interesting because Miami, they want to run the football. SMU's done a pretty good job stopping the run this year. Top 10 in America when it comes to yards per carry allowed. So you look at the games where SMU's had trouble stopping the run. Why have they had trouble stopping the run? Because Baylor and TCU gashed them in the passing game. Josh Hoover, Sawyer Robertson, I think combined went for something stupid of like 750 yards or north of that. Just ridiculous. When they were able to throw the football, guess what? Then they were able to run the football. So the same formula, I think, is in play here for Miami when it comes to their desire to run the football. Let's throw it first. Malachi Toney, get it to CJ Daniels, whoever you pick a name. Pick any name you want to. Put the ball in the air. Let those guys eat. Loosen up that box, and when that happens, then turn around, power run game, inside zone run game. Doesn't matter, north and south. When you do that, I think then you really have SMU on the ropes. So, again, Baylor and TCU had over 100 yards rushing because they were so effective throwing the football downfield and making that second and third level of the SMU defense be a little bit on edge, okay? So, it's a great culture test for Miami. It's a great mindset test for Miami. You're 2 weeks post-loss. You got 20 new players via the portal. You're on the road for an 11 a.m. kick, like I already mentioned, and you're playing a team in SMU now who's coming off of a heartbreaking last-second loss in ACC play. They were on the road. They're coming back home. They're desperate. Can you take all those external variables, block them out, and play your brand of football? Miami brand of football, where Carson Beck plays clean, doesn't turn it over, they will win this game. Hear me loud and clear. So what's our take? Do we think that happens? I do. I think that Miami's going to benefit from the lack of spotlight they've had the last couple of weeks. I think the pressure of being this number one team, number two team in America, and not having that anymore on their plate is maybe going to serve them well. Sure, it's an early kick. Sure, it's a road trip. I don't care. I think Cristobal will have them dialed in and ready to roll. I think Miami will be the more physical team on Saturday. I think they win. I think they cover. Final score, Miami 34, SMU 20. The Canes get a win in Texas and head back home with their playoff hopes alive and hoping for some magic to get them into the ACC title game and rooting for some losses from Georgia Tech and or Virginia. All right? So if rooting for some magic, you're probably rooting for some Sooner magic as well if you're an Oklahoma fan. They go on the road to Tennessee this week, and we already broke that game down, but if you've watched this show, you know we're in the business of trying to talk about what's not being talked about. You catch my drift here? We're trying to be maybe a level deeper than all those headline takes. So I want us to right now break down what's being missed in the Oklahoma-Tennessee game. We'll start with Oklahoma. The headline take is John Mateer's got to get back healthy. He's got to look more like himself. And we've said all that. That's 110% true. But I think what's being missed when you speak about Oklahoma, hey, y'all, they kind of found something in the run game at the end of the Ole Miss game. They went to Xavier Robinson, a little bit more heavily. He had over 100 yards on like 9 carries. Had a big explosive run, but he just looked different running the football. Ran better behind his pads, was more north and south. Thought he was better when it comes to yards after contact than what they've had out there. If you can find a way to run the football, if you're Oklahoma, you're going to have more windows open up downfield in the passing game. And that was kind of the whole issue for Oklahoma against Ole Miss. I watched them play offensive football, and there was no real base for them to operate from. Like their one touchdown they had in that first half, well, not one, but one of the touchdowns they had in that game early on was a broken play, off script, Mateer's rolling to his right, finds his man, he scores. And like that's all well and good. I love that. You got to have some Mateer magic. But this offense is built to run the football and have plays develop off of that run game. If you can't run the football, you got problems. Xavier Robinson, bringing something to the table there, to me makes me think that the Oklahoma offense is going to find a way to score. Because we've talked about Tennessee and how bad they are on the back end. They're allowing 281 a game. If you can run the football and command more attention in the box and get more real estate downfield for John Mateer and company, I understand the hand. We got to rehab it a little bit. We got to get that whole thing warm and look more like ourselves. But I think having bigger windows to throw to only makes me feel better about John Mateer and his progress and the Oklahoma offense as a whole. So what's being missed? Oklahoma might have found something in the run game, which makes me think that John Mateer could have a much better showing this game than he's had maybe the last couple of weeks. Now, what's being missed when it comes to Tennessee, the Oklahoma defense is really good. Oklahoma defense is one of the best in college football. That is the headline take. How does Joey Aguilar and Josh Heupel measure up with all that Oklahoma brings to the table? In a very convenient fashion here, I think Tennessee has the answers to the questions Oklahoma is going to present. And the Ole Miss game is a great example of that. Oklahoma wants to bring pressure, wants to try and confuse you a little bit, be a little bit exotic. How do you answer pressure and confusion and all those things? Get the ball out of your quarterback's hands quick, give them answers pre-snap. Tennessee, with the way they line it up with wide splits and the way they run the football and all those things, they have all the opportunity in the world to do exactly what Ole Miss just did to Oklahoma, rather. Like Joey Aguilar, I think is teed up here to have a very big day. I don't think it'll be a whole lot of 3 and a hitch. Go ahead and launch it downfield to Chris Browse like you've seen over the different points of the year for Tennessee. But the way that Oklahoma applies pressure, the space that Tennessee aligns with, I think will present some problems there. Like, it's hard to bring pressure from depth in general, but it's much more difficult to bring pressure from that second and third level when you're reading that overhang defender all the way out by the hash mark if you're Joey Aguilar and he's trying to come off the edge. You can't do that. You can't do that and then not tip your hand too much, Joey Aguilar, and have some explosive plays happen, is my whole point here. So your question here is like, okay, that's great, JD, that Oklahoma's going to score and Tennessee has answers for the offensive side of the ball against Oklahoma. So what? So what is I'd keep an eye on that over. That's the first and foremost part of this. 56.5. I might look at that over a little bit closely, just between you and me. What I think is going to happen here is we're going to have a situation where this game becomes a shootout. And a shootout to me here, if I'm Joey Aguilar, I feel pretty good about my chances with my offense and my weapons. But at the same time, if you told Oklahoma fans we're going to be in a shootout, I don't think they're batting an eye with John Mateer pulling the trigger. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these teams go back and forth offensively. And one more thought here, both teams are desperate. Both teams have 2 losses. This is a playoff elimination game for both sides of this. People are saying the playoff starts in December and after conference title weekend. No, this playoff starts for Oklahoma and Tennessee this weekend in Neyland Stadium with the dark mode unis activated for Joey Aguilar and company. So when you're desperate, you find ways to push back or push past, rather, maybe some of the things that you've shown to this point in the year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Oklahoma play with an inspired effort offensively and do some things we haven't seen them do in a couple of weeks. Same deal for Tennessee. Maybe the defense shows up and does some things that they haven't done to this point in the year, and maybe they look better. But again, I'm sticking to shootout kind of fashion, and desperate attitude for both teams will make for an awesome ball game. It's why it's our BetMGM game of the week. Oklahoma found a way to run the football. Tennessee, offense might just have the exact right answers that you need when it comes to being ready for what Oklahoma's going to have on the defensive side of the football. All right, so we did this last week, and I want to circle back with y'all on this. Head coaches, I don't think any of them are actively dishonest at any of their press conferences during the week. I think they're all as honest as they possibly can be. However, when you're a head coach in college football, you're only able to be so honest. So I want to go ahead and translate a couple of these head coaches and what they've said to this point in the week. Let's start with Kirby Smart. He was honest about the Brian Kelly firing, but I think there's maybe some more brutality he could have been honest with when it comes to how he answered that question when it came to addressing the whole situation at LSU. Take a listen to this.
I think there's so much built around the playoffs, and it's like everything's boom or bust, and you can't have a normal season. People got to make decisions earlier based on how somebody does, and I don't know enough about it. I know it's high expectations. I coached at LSU, and a guy once told me, he said, that office you're in, that's not your office. You're borrowing it. And I knew right then that if you didn't win, you wouldn't be there long.
So again, the question Kirby Smart got was essentially, what are your thoughts on the Brian Kelly firing? And if I'm translating his answer correctly there, Kirby Smart is saying, we've changed what success looks like in college football. It used to be if you can make a BCS bowl and win double-digit games, that's a great thing for your football program. It's a great thing for your fan base. That is success. However, though, what happened? We expanded the playoff. We've gone to 12 teams. There's more spots. More spots makes you think as a fan base or as an administration that maybe you should have a spot. And this is not me insinuating that Kirby Smart thinks that he has any definitive take on Brian Kelly. But what I'm getting here from Kirby Smart in his answer is he's saying this is not the last time we're going to see something like this happen. In fact, given the context of this season, not the first time we've seen something like this happen. It is all about the college football playoff right now, for better or for worse. So Kirby Smart is saying, man, we got to bring some urgency here. Your office you're in right now might have your nameplate on it. Might knock on the door and someone might say, hey, is Kirby in today? Yeah, Kirby's in today, 110% he's in because he's the head coach of Georgia football. But that office he's in, he's working every single day to make sure he gets to stay in that office. And so the thought behind Brian Kelly and the firing a couple of years ago, I don't know that Brian Kelly gets fired. And I think Kirby Smart's essentially saying the same thing. So translation, we've changed what success looks like in college football. Brian Kelly and his firing is a product of that. And I thought that answer was very telling when it comes to just how Kirby is viewing college football here and success in it moving forward here and what Georgia has to do in future seasons. Now, he was also asked about the progress of Gunnar Stockton. And I think Kirby, between the lines here, was talking his cash about his quarterback in a positive manner.
Yeah, I want to see him continue to grow, take what the defense gives him, understand what we're trying to do. We give Gunnar a lot of latitude and options in terms of the play call. It's more about putting us in the right play to be successful based on what they're in defensively. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that decision-making process. Every play might have 2 to 3 decisions he has to make, and those 2 to 3 decisions sometimes determine the outcome of that play. And really proud of his growth. He's got to keep doing it and keep taking care of the ball. And when he does that, then we're a good football team.
Translation: Gunnar Stockton's a freaking dog, y'all. Y'all got to put some respect on Gunnar Stockton's name right now. Yeah, it's Georgia. Yeah, you think about Georgia and you think, well, they got studs all over the place. Well, their defense is always great. Well, they always have great backs and great linemen. And yeah, that's true for the most part. But Georgia this year has not been very complimentary with how they play football. Y'all, that defense is not bad, but that secondary is not good. That secondary has put Gunnar Stockton in a lot of spots where he's got to go answer scores. And so Kirby Smart's accentuating this idea here around his quarterback. Like, hey, we're good because Gunnar Stockton's shown up in some big spots for us here. We give him a lot of responsibility to put us in the right play. Even when Gunnar Stockton's not down there launching missiles to Humphreys or Branch or whoever, he's still responsible for us being in the right situation offensively. And them being in the right situation offensively this year has translated to them being as successful as they've been. Think about the game against Tennessee. Took 44 points. Took a Gunnar Stockton clinic to win that game in Neyland. Think about the game against Ole Miss. You punted 3 times, you would have lost that football game if you're Georgia. Gunnar Stockton, and Cato made a great point during our pre-show meeting, so I want to essentially steal what he was saying. Gunnar Stockton is the Yeti of college football right now. Whatever Georgia needs from him, hey, Gunnar, we need you to go ahead and have a good day on the ground and just not turn the football over. No problem. Defense got it today. Cool. 196 yards against Kentucky? No problem. Sure thing. Gunnar Stockton, need you to go off today. Defense having a tough day at the office against Ole Miss. 5 touchdowns? No problem. Not a problem for me. Hot beverage? You need a little thermos to get you right during a cold day? No problem. Gunnar Stockton got you. You need a cooler beverage. You need to stay nice and a lower temperature there for you. Gunnar Stockton, same deal. No problem. Number 2 quarterback rating in all of college football. 10 touchdowns, 1 pick. Whatever you need, Gunnar Stockton's been able to meet that for Georgia week in and week out. And so Gunnar Stockton deserves all his flowers. Gunnar Stockton deserves all the credit in the world for what he's done to this point in the year. It's not necessarily the same hype that some quarterbacks are getting across college football with the Heisman discussion and the NFL prospect discussion. But Gunnar Stockton is every bit as impactful, if not more impactful, than some of those cats relative to where Georgia is right now in the context of this college football season. So that's Kirby translated for you. We've changed the way success looks in college football. The Brian Kelly firing is evidence of that. And y'all better respect my quarterback, man, because he is hooping right now. All right? Now, I felt like this was the best week to do this. Lane Kiffin is being talked about for a lot of these high-profile jobs. The Florida job, most recently the LSU job. He was asked about Brian Kelly's firing, and I thought his take on it was really interesting. Go ahead and check this out.
I think it's a product of things that happen. I think that, Elko doing such a great job at A&M, I think puts in people's heads like, hey, these buyouts are ridiculous to pay, and, but I'm sure an A&M right now is sitting there going, okay, well, yeah, that was ridiculous to pay, but we feel pretty good about that right now. So anytime something works, other people go, well, let's go do that. And so I think that's happened. And once it now has places accepting, to pay these buyouts, which I think is ridiculous, but that it's happening, then it's easier for the next team and the next team, to do it.
Translation: nobody's safe anymore. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what your buyout is, doesn't matter what you've done previously. You are one bad year away from being fired. And the Brian Kelly buyout of $53 million, or right around there, is evidence of that. And so I think the interesting point he made there around Mike Elko is right on the money. Jimbo Fisher had a wild buyout too. That was kind of the discussion you had every year of like, hey, Jimbo Fisher doesn't seem like the right guy at A&M, but they have such a ridiculous buyout. They're kind of trapped by that. Lane Kiffin's like, nope, Mike Elko's killing it right now. And so A&M, as much as maybe they didn't like paying that buyout, bet you they'd pay that buyout twice over to be where they are right now in the context of having Mike Elko and have this A&M team absolutely humming. So when things work, people copy. People are seeing A&M and their success. They're like, okay, it took a buyout that sucked, but like if we want to get our Mike Elko in the building, we want to turn things around, yeah, we got to go pay that massive buyout. So he didn't say this, but I was reading between the lines a little bit here and catching this. Lane Kiffin's got a good thing going at Ole Miss, doesn't he? Lane Kiffin's as safe as you can be at Ole Miss right now, relative to them deciding to fire a one Lane Kiffin. I wonder a little bit if in the back of Lane Kiffin's mind, he's seeing Brian Kelly get fired with a $53 million buyout. He's seeing James Franklin be fired. He's hearing the discussion around Mike Norvell be fired a couple of years removed from winning the ACC championship. And I wonder if he's thinking, okay, if nobody's safe in college football, if all my neighbors are being evicted after 1 or 2 bad years, and I'm safe in my house, do I really want to move? Just food for thought there. But that was my takeaway when it came to the question he was asked and his answer he gave around Brian Kelly and his firing and the comparison he made to Mike Elko, which I think is a very fair one to make. He was also asked about the way that he spoke to his team after the Oklahoma game. There's rumblings about he told them to enjoy the moment more and kind of take it in. A couple of players after the Oklahoma win apparently came back out of the locker room and thanked their fans and dapped up some of the people that made the trip from Oxford. And he was asked about that, and I thought his answer was really fascinating, especially with everything that's being said about him and the potential of him taking another job, whether it be LSU or Florida.
I know you wanted them to appreciate it, and do you feel like the players kind of got the message you wanted when you asked them to come back out?
I don't know. I didn't ask him. I just trying to teach him, things that I missed in life and moments, and just because I was always like, okay, man, we won, get to the locker room next game and all that, and so just trying to help him through to stop and enjoy the moments, and because they're hard to come by. And I said it before, being at USC, we won 34 straight and 26 straight at Alabama with Coach Saban, that I just felt like sometimes, man, I didn't enjoy the moments, because those are historic runs. And so when we get in these good seasons, which there's been a lot of here, just try to tell the guys hey, enjoy it, especially after the wins.
So I think there's 2 ways to take that. There's one thought where you say he's telling his guys to enjoy the moment, be where your feet are, enjoy this because you're going to pivot to something else here in the future. It'd be very easy to throw on the lens of that sounds like Lane Kiffin soaking in his final moments at Ole Miss. And I don't think you're wrong if you have that opinion. What I took from it, based on everything we know about Lane Kiffin and his career, where he's been pretty aggressive with getting to the next place, the next move, and all those things. He's like, no, I want to enjoy all of this. I want my players to enjoy all of this. I want us to be present. I want us to enjoy where our feet are right now, because this is something you work really hard for, to win football games, to win as many as we've won here at this point at Ole Miss, to be a top 10 team, to get a win on the road at Oklahoma. I wonder a little bit if that answer and that approach from Lane Kiffin is maybe a peek into his mind of maybe the grass isn't always greener the next place. Leaving Tennessee for the USC job. I don't know if he'd do that again, quite frankly. All the moves he made throughout his career to get to that next spot, to be the hotshot coach, to be, in any given position of perceived success or power. I wonder if a little bit, having had so much success and so much movement early throughout his career, I wonder if that guidance he's given to his players of, when I was at USC, we won this many in a row. When I was at Alabama, we won this many in a row. Enjoy this and don't rush to the next thing. I wonder if maybe that's a thought that he's having right now when it comes to how he's perceiving the LSU opening and the Florida opening. I have to believe he's going to be offered both jobs. If Lane Kiffin wants to be in Baton Rouge or Gainesville next year, I think he has every opportunity to go do that. But this answer, telling his guys to enjoy it and to be present in the moment, all those things, I think that maybe could make you believe a little bit that he's saying, this is special, I want to be here, I want to enjoy this, I want to be present, and I don't want to be happier than happy. So that's Lane Kiffin translated for you. We swung our sword as best we could to try and make sense of these different things the coaches are saying. Again, no coach is being dishonest actively, but I think some coaches, by nature of them being who they are, they can't be quite as brutally honest. So that's what we're trying to do here on this show, is be as brutally honest as we can for some of these coaches across the college football landscape. Today was Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin. Let us know in the comment section, too, who you want to see translated next on this show. So I want to finish this show in the spirit of translating Lane Kiffin, talking about the LSU job opening. Pete Nakos has a hot board out over on on3.com for potential next prospects to be the head coach in Baton Rouge. And I want to unpack this with our very own Caden Smith and kind of unpack a couple of these names. Caden, I think there is different tiers to the coaching candidates that you could get at LSU. There is that tier 1 category, which is Marcus Freeman and Lane Kiffin. Marcus Freeman is the unicorn tier. Can you get him to leave Notre Dame? Probably not. Like, that'd be a very, very difficult thing to ask of the guy. But I think if there was ever a job you're going to leave Notre Dame for, if you're Marcus Freeman, and it's not Ohio State, LSU, with the resources, with the recruiting grounds, with the roster you're walking into, quite frankly, with it being the SEC, with everything that you could do at LSU, the same thought we had around Brian Kelly when he took that job at LSU. I think you even dial that up even more when it comes to skins on the wall that Marcus Freeman has and what he's done on the recruiting trail and what he could be at LSU. He's got to be your first call. If he's not, you're doing something wrong. Thoughts on Marcus Freeman at LSU?
Yeah, I think you talk about the tiers, and we'll go through the tiers through this hot board. But I think in the back of our minds while we do these tiers, let's try to think about where we see Brian Kelly on these tiers relative to his entire career, because I think it gets interesting very fast, and it gets kind of back to the previous conversation we had about James Franklin, where it's like, okay, well, are you going to bring in a coach that has a better record, more wins than this guy? So I think that'll be interesting. But Marcus Freeman, of course. I mean, we saw what he did at Notre Dame. You could argue this might be the most logical hire of all time if they do this, because you are getting someone who you hired Brian Kelly, if you're LSU, obviously because he was successful at Notre Dame and doing that with those resources were. And then who comes after him and does even better? Who takes him immediately to a national championship? Marcus Freeman. So I think naturally that's the most ideal fit for an LSU would be Marcus Freeman, simply because he would literally have the expectation to follow the footsteps and make that program better than it was left by Brian Kelly. So that's the natural fit. Can they take him away from there? I don't know. I think Ohio State's kind of the program we have circled, because Marcus Freeman went there as the only school he would go to, because he's making Notre Dame work at such a high level and such a unique place and fitting right in, being a perfect match, squeezing the most out of those resources, getting the most out of his players, having former NFL players send their sons to play for Marcus Freeman. He's just so dialed with Notre Dame. I don't know if he's going to leave. And it's funny, we talk about the Ohio State Marcus Freeman thing. A lot of guys on this hot board, too, who also are alma maters are where they're coaching right now. So going to be very interesting to see not just at LSU, but overall, how many of these schools are able to take people away from them that went to that school, care about the community.
Going back to Brian Kelly, I think it's okay to say, if you were wrong about Brian Kelly going to LSU and the success we thought there would be, to say that out loud. Like, I thought Brian Kelly was going to work just fine in Baton Rouge. Now, I didn't know that it would break the way it broke when it comes to the Cajun culture that maybe he didn't embrace so much. But you hear people say, like, oh, I knew whenever he put the family thing out there and he did the whole accent at his first ever speaking engagement at the basketball game. It's like, I knew it wasn't going to work then. It's like, no, you didn't. You didn't know that, because he was playing for an SEC championship his first year as the head coach. You didn't know that. Maybe you thought that in the back of your mind, but like, nobody was this out on Brian Kelly his first year when they played for an SEC championship. And I was definitely one of those guys. I was like, they look like they're doing just fine right now. It looks like a fit to me. I think it was the exact way I phrased it. And I think I made a hype video too, Cato, saying I think Brian Kelly's a fit and it works just fine and all those things. And then we're sitting here a few years later and it is what it is. But Brian Kelly, the on paper part of it made all the sense in the world. I think it's fine for us to acknowledge that too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people coming out of the woodwork and having a lot of hate for Brian Kelly. And it's like, there was none of this hate when they were in the SEC title game their first year. There was none of this hate in his second year when he had 10 wins. And it was very clear that their problem was the defense when they were giving up 40-plus points in those 3 losses. And then the next year he hires Blake Baker and they try to get things going. And then now when things fall apart, that's when we start going back and finding the receipts of the telltale signs that this wasn't going to work with Brian Kelly. The personality fit would have been put to the side if this team was regularly in the college football playoff, competing for national championships, competing for SEC titles. It's always what you can tolerate. So, yeah, like that we'll get through this with a lot of these guys too. Personality fit might be better, sure, but are you going to be able to get 10 wins in several seasons at LSU, have a season like you did this year with Brian Kelly and be okay with it? Like, if you're okay with anything less than that, it's all about the on-the-field results. We care about the box scores and fan bases, however they warmth or however warm or cold they are about their head coach, regardless of what's happening on the field. If they're winning games on the field, that's all put to the wayside.
And this next part of the discussion for the LSU job, I think the best way to frame it is like there's Lane Kiffin and there's everyone else. Assuming Marcus Freeman isn't leaving South Bend, there is the Lane Kiffin desire, I think, for the folks in Baton Rouge, and then there is your Eli Drinkwitz, your Brent Keys. I'll have my own take on Kenny Dillingham here in a second, which I'm excited for. But like Lane Kiffin, if we're just purely going off of what's on paper and how good the job is and who the best candidate is, like that is the equation that makes the most sense. Is it not? Like you need someone who's going to score points, you need someone who's going to acquire talent, you need someone who's going to understand how to acquire talent in modern college football, who understands the SEC. LSU and Lane Kiffin, it's like check that box, check that box, check that box. The thing that I can't totally get down here, Cato, is the heart wants what it wants, and it seems like there is some different heartstrings that maybe aren't firmly tied but loosely tied to the idea of Florida. If he doesn't leave Ole Miss, that is. If he decides to leave Oxford, there's the whole thing with his affinity for Steve Spurrier. There's the whole thing with, I know, his time spent in Florida FAU. I believe that there's some things with either his wife or ex-wife and her ties to Florida. Like there's a lot of Florida, like, adjacent things about Lane Kiffin that, to me, I close my eyes and can see maybe a little bit more clearly him wearing that logo in the blue and orange. But LSU's the best job. So that's the tricky part about this whole thing. Does his heart want to be in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, breaking news, it'd be a slam dunk hire if Florida or LSU got their hands on Lane Kiffin.
Oh my,
obviously.
Windmill just.
He showed what he can do at Ole Miss, making that program prominent, and now he'd be kind of spoon-fed to prominent programs who've just their own logo, their own branding, their own history in college football speaks for itself. And you can double down on that with a Lane Kiffin who would love the pieces, the weapons you can get in Louisiana, a school known for their pedigree at the skill positions and the quarterback position. And he's a cool coach. LSU's a cool brand. Like, there's no doubt it would work, but it does seem like all the arrows are pointing to Florida or even pointing to him staying. So that's why I'm excited to jump into the rest of this board and this discussion, because I don't think we have to squint too hard to picture a universe where Marcus Freeman stays at Notre Dame and Lane Kiffin either stays at Ole Miss or goes to Florida. Then we get into the real people we could see actually landing this job a little bit more realistically by addition by subtraction. And I'm curious how you feel about the rest of the pack here.
Well, I'll just say this. If we get a Lane Kiffin and Whit Weeks media days where they are both representing LSU,
popcorn.
Oh my gosh, dude. Like, that in itself would just be social media gold and hilarity and would be all those things. There's a lot of names here in the everyone else category. I've said I think Drinkwitz is going to get one of these jobs. It's just my opinion with what he's done at Missouri. I think Brent Key, if you could get him to leave Georgia Tech, would be awesome. I'm going to plant my flag here, though, Cato. Whenever you fire a head coach, typically you see an administration say, okay, how do we get the opposite of what we just had? Because what we just had didn't work. You see coaches that are on the defensive side, they hire an offensive guy. Who is the most opposite of this group of Brian Kelly? I think it's Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah.
He's offense, he's juice, he's excitement, he's charisma. I have zero doubt he would embrace the heck out of Baton Rouge if he were to eventually get that job. Now, is he leaving ASU? My feel is probably not. Yeah. Like, he seems like he's going to be buried in Tempe, Arizona under the stadium. Like, he loves that place so much. But, dude, if there was a fit and a fun fit here, Kenny Dillingham, to me, inverse Brian Kelly, the zig to that zag, I think he would be so fun there, dude. Like, he's out here asking the collective in his post-game press conferences, or people to give the collective in his post-game press conferences at ASU. You're not doing that in Baton Rouge. No. You are taking all of their funds and being massively successful based on what LSU is giving you to work with. So Kenny Dillingham, I'll plant my flag. Fun fit, fun hire, the everyone else hire for me. I'm nominating Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah, I think anyone who just wants an injection of excitement, whether it's Florida or LSU, I mean, Kenny Dillingham is the guy to call if you want a hot young head coach. Like, I'm curious, though, maybe we can find this out with Pete Nakos later in the week or next week. Like, what is LSU looking for? Because Kenny Dillingham isn't that experienced. Like, he's in his third year as a head coach. How comfortable is LSU and their fan base handing over the keys of such a souped-up car to someone whose overall head coaching record is 19-15. Like, yes, they had 3 wins first year Arizona State, turned things around quickly in 1 year, won the Big 12, went toe-to-toe with Texas, and could have very well won that Texas playoff game in an 11-win season. But they're 5-3 right now. They're going through their struggles. And you got to pry them away from Arizona State. On this board, you have Brent Key, who is a Georgia Tech guy. You have a Clark Lee, who is a Vanderbilt guy. Jeff Brom went to Louisville. Kenny Dillingham went to Arizona State. Who can you lure away from their alma mater is one whole problem within itself. And then after that, how many of these guys have the resume that stacks up with a Brian Kelly? I mean, Clark Lee, JD, if you had to guess how many SEC wins Clark Lee had in his first 3 years at Vanderbilt, how many would you guess?
In his first 3 years?
Yeah, not the last two that have Diego Pavia under center, but the 3 years before that.
I'm going to say he had 4.
He had 2, JD.
Wow.
And I think that I get Clark Lee should get some interviews for these jobs that are coming up. And at the end of the day, I think Diego Pavia was really the biggest imprint on changing the program there. I think that this team had 9 total wins before Diego Pavia showed up, 2 in the SEC, 3 a year. So, to me, that would be a concern for me if I was an LSU fan and I was looking at this hot board. John Summerall, to me, is the one I can't get out of my head. I think, hypothetically, if all of these guys, you can't get the Lanes, you can't get the Marcus Freemans, everyone wants to stay at their alma mater, they all get paid more because they had these interviews and the price just went up on them. John Summerall's 15-6 at Tulane right now. He was 23-4 at Troy. Everywhere he's gone, he's done amazing. This would be his big break as far as going to the Power Four, and breaks don't get much bigger than going to LSU, but he's been recruiting in the state for the last 2 years. In the Sun Belt level, he immediately showed up in the league, won 2 straight conference title games, 2 11-2 and 12-2 seasons. I think he has a lot of the Brent Key traits. And when you talk about the opposite of Brian Kelly, when you look at the hot board, there are a lot of guys that are opposite of Brian Kelly in a lot of ways. But to me, the Brent Keys, the John Summeralls, those are the hard-nosed dudes, man, who get the most out of their teams. I talked to John Summerall the first time I met him, the first time I interviewed him when I was still covering the Sun Belt. I wanted to run through a wall. I got it. I understood it. He's authentic. It's not going to be questioned. His love for the program, his love for his players, and even his love for the state of Louisiana, I thought was seen and put on display in week 1 when they wanted to wear different uniforms against Northwestern. Northwestern wasn't about that. They were trying to do that for Hurricane Katrina, and he said that was part of the reason why they ran up the score on that Northwestern team. So I think this is a guy that will win the press conference day 1 when he shows up at LSU, no matter what you think his experience is before this at the Power 5 level, whatever. I think he would immediately capture the hearts of LSU's fan base, and I think that he has the results on the field as well to back that up, and I think it'd be a little bit easier to maybe pry him away from a Kentucky that people kind of have him penciled in as a program he's going to. I think LSU could swoop in and infringe on that and give him an offer he couldn't refuse, and really be a guy that can replicate what he's doing at Tulane within the state at the highest level possible at LSU.
Andy Staples said this on their show with him and Andy Ari on 3, and I think it's on the money. John Summerall is going to get an SEC job. Now, is it LSU? Who knows? Is it Kentucky where he played? Who knows? Auburn, though, feels like it's going to become available. Arkansas, it's going to be available. If Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss, John Summerall could backdoor his way in there. John Summerall, to your point, Cato, going to be an SEC head coach. And a guy, I know he's at Tulane, so I don't know if LSU fans are like, do we really want to hire the guy from Tulane? A guy that knows the state, to your point, a guy who's got the edge, the energy, all those things, the authenticity that maybe you didn't have anyone, Brian Kelly, would make a lot of sense. I like the John Summerall take there, a little dark horse action, Cato. I like that a lot, man. I'm excited to get Pete Nakos' thoughts on this here, though. We'll get him on this week, and this is hot board, so we'll unpack what he thinks is the most likely as the intel continues to flow in and he gets more of a pulse on things. But it's going to be wild, man. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, y'all know where to come for the offseason, man. In season, we're talking about ball. We're talking about ball 365 days a year. This coach carousel is going to get crazy. The portal is going to get crazy with it, and we're going to be here for it. So this is the place to be for sure.
It is spinning. Cato, great stuff as always. Phenomenal stuff. And phenomenal stuff by y'all making the show what it is. We appreciate y'all being subscribed. Back on the air tomorrow. Kick the door down on week 10 of the college football season, but content round the clock as always. Again, like Cato said, make sure you are subscribed. Nothing but talking about the greatest sport on the face of planet Earth on this show year-round, and the greatest sport on the face of planet Earth, of course, ramping up in a big way here with this carousel, and, of course, they got games being played, too, which we have obviously talking about year-round. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. We'll keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.